Hello and welcome back to the course on Tableau. And in today's tutorial, we're talking about data blending. It's a very exciting and at the same time controversial topic in Tableau. And that's because data blending is often very underestimated. It is a feature that is not often used, but at the same time, it is very powerful and should be used more. And moreover, at the beginning, it might be a bit difficult to distinguish between joining data and blending data. But don't worry, today we will clarify all of that and we'll put everything back in its place so that you can comfortably use and take full advantage of these powerful features, both joining and blending data. So to start off with, we're going to need a browser. If you go to superdatascience.com/Tableau, and then you scroll down to section number 5, joining and blending data, just download the very first file, which is airline comparison. So we'll just save that. There we go. And now I'll just bring this file up, airline comparison. And as you can see here, we've got two tabs. The first tab has revenue for airline number 1, and it's split by period, financial year 2015 and financial year 2016, and is split by multiple regions. And the second tab has revenue for airline number 2. It is also split by year and region. As you can see, airline number 2 operates in less regions. And another thing to note is that in the first tab, the year is called period, and in the second tab, the year is called year. So you'll see why that's important in a few minutes. So I'm just going to close that. And we're going to open up a new Tableau workbook. Okay, and now we're going to connect our Excel file, airline comparison. There it is. We're going to connect to the first tab here. So that's done. Now we're going to create another connection, and it will be to the same Excel file, but now we will connect to the second tab. Now if we go to our sheet 1, you will see here two data connections. And they represent the two different tabs in our Excel workbook. So what we're going to do now is we'll start visualizing airline number 1. We want to see how the revenue is split by region, for instance. So we'll ignore year for now. We'll just sum the revenue for the 2 years. And as you can see here, it's broken down by region now, and we can see how the revenue changes from region to region. Now what we want to do is we want to add airline number 2 to this visualization. So if we go to the second data source, right away here you can see this orange line on the left, and you can see this little link icon, which tells us that Tableau is prepared to blend the data for us now. And so this is where we get to the topic of blending. What is a blend? Well, remember how previously in one of the tutorials before this, we created a join for our data. So here in the data source, we connected some different sources of data, like for instance, like that. We put in another element of data here, and we created an inner join. And then, so we prepared all of the data before we actually worked with it in our workbooks. Well, now we haven't done that, but at the same time, Tableau allows us to do that on the fly while we're working with our workbooks. And that is called data blending. And blending is kind of like a smart join. So let's have a bit more of a play around with it and see how it works. What we're going to do now is we're going to drag revenue for the second airline also into our columns. And right away, now you can see that we have two elements in our visualization. We've got the first set of bars and the second set of bars, which represents the second airline. And also it's important to note that here in our control panel, we've got two main elements. So these controls are for this airline, and these controls are for this airline and these bars. And also you can control all of them through this feature here. So let me just show you an example. If I want to change the color, for instance, I can change the color for everything. Or if I want to change something for this other bar chart, so just one of them, for instance, I want to make it a line chart instead of a bar chart, I can do that. And then I can go into the second bar chart, I can change something else as well. I can change the color here if I want, and things like that. So we'll just cancel all those changes because we don't really need them. But keep that in mind that you can control these separately if you need to. And if you need to control them together, then you just need to click this all feature over here. So what happened here? Well, Tableau knows that it needs to join the two data sets in order to visualize them, because as you can see here, we're using region from airline number 1 and revenue from airline number 1, but this revenue comes from airline number 2, and that's why it's marked with this little database with a orange icon on it. And so Tableau needs to somehow aggregate revenue from airline number 2 at the level of region of airline number 1. So how does it do it? Well, Tableau knows that it needs to blend the data, meaning that it needs to join the two data sources. And how does it do it? It goes through the region variable here, and that's shown using this link. So it's basically telling us that Tableau has performed a left join from between the data sets airline number 1 and airline number 2 on the field which is called region. So it's kind of a join on the fly. So that's great, and the way region was picked up is because the name is the same. So region here is the same as region here, and that's how Tableau understood that it needs to join on the region field. But what we actually want to do is we want to visualize not only by region but also by period, so by year. So if we go back to airline number 1 and we take period here and we drag it into our rows, you'll see here financial year 2015, financial year 2016. So now one more thing we're going to do is for this chart on the left, we will take some revenue, we'll hold control and we'll drag it into labels, and we will just format that quickly so that it's not in millions, so there's less numbers. Currency, I just want millions. There we go. And then we will take this revenue and drag it onto the label for this chart. And now we will format it here as well. Currency, just in millions. And now for the whole dashboard, we will format it and tell it to be 10 and bold. Okay, so hopefully you can see that a bit better now. Now what's happened is after we dragged period, so I'll just perform that again. So I'll take period out and I'll drag period into rows. You can see after we drag period into rows, the first airline's data was split into two periods. So here you can see Africa 10 million and Africa 8 million, Asia 20, Asia 16. So it is working here. But at the same time, the second airline, it's not being affected by the period variable. It's basically what it did is just duplicated the data for the full data set instead of splitting it into two separate periods. Why did that happen? Well, because Tableau does not know how to connect to this period variable, how to connect the second data set to the period variable. And that's because we haven't established that connection. So we can fix that very easily. If we go to data, edit relationships, remember how we talked about joining on multiple fields? Well, here we've only joined on region. You can see that that was picked up automatically. What we're going to do now is we're going to join on multiple fields. And now instead of just joining on region, we're going to join on period and year here. So if we do that, click OK, you can see right away this has been adjusted. So what that did is now Tableau is joining these two data sets on two fields. And this is exactly what we talked about in that example with joining when you need to join multiple fields. If you don't join on multiple fields when it is required, then you will duplicate values and you will overinflate the observations. So in this case, what happened is Tableau joined on two fields, and those are period, region, and year. Now, the reason why Tableau didn't pick it up originally was because year has a different name. So what we'll do now is I'll show you how else you could have fixed that problem. So if we go to edit relationships and we take period out, so we'll just put it back to automatic, click OK. You see we have that problem where the values are summed here and the values are summed here instead of being split. Now what we can do is we can just go to one of these data sets. So here we've got period. So how about we go to the second data set and we will here change the name. So we'll rename it. Instead of year, we'll call it also period. And what you'll see is that Tableau automatically right away picks up that this should be a connection. So now Tableau knows that the names are the same So therefore, it is joining the data on those two fields. One more thing you should know is that if you take period out of your visualization, right away Tableau no longer needs to join on that field. It does know that there's a connection here, but it won't be joining on that field. And that is because that field is no longer part of your visualization. So you can manually switch it on if you want, or switch it off, but it doesn't really affect the visualization in this case because it isn't participating in this visual. And so what that does is that Tableau actually creates this join on the fly. And the way Tableau does it is a bit different to the way we were doing it manually back here in data sources when we were creating our own joins. The way Tableau does these blends is it actually, instead of joining the data at row level, it will first send queries to each of the data sets. It will aggregate them. So here you've got airline 1 and airline 2. It will aggregate them to the level that is required at the level of granularity of the visualization, and then it'll only join them. So in our case, for instance, before joining the data, it goes into the airline 1 data set, and it looks at the data, it aggregates it to the right level. So in our case, it's the region level. And then it goes to the airline 2 data set. It aggregates the data to the region level as well. And then it brings back the aggregated values and joins them. And that is what data blending does. So it is a very, very smart left join. And you can also see that it is a left join because here, one table is the primary table, the blue one, and the airline 2 table is actually the secondary table, which is marked with an orange mark. And from there you can see that it's a left join because here you can see all of the regions which are present in the airline 1 database, and here you can and they're joined to the airline 2 database, and therefore these two are blank because they're not present in airline 2. And finally, blending is actually done on a per sheet basis. So if I create a new sheet here, you can see right away there is no more blue or primary and secondary data source, which means you can create a brand new blend. And let's have a look at an example here. If we start creating the blend with airline 2, you will see that it will become the primary data source. So if we drag region into rows, and now we drag revenue into columns, and also revenue into label, and make this a bit smaller, what you will see is that when we go to airline 1, it has become now the secondary. For this sheet, it is the secondary data source. And if we take revenue and drag it into columns, here what you will notice is that there's no longer 6 rows. Actually, before we do that, we have to fix something up because some revenue, you see this revenue has been copied for both of the sheets, and that's not correct. So that can be a mistake. We need to take out revenue from here and drag using control revenue, the correct revenue. And so you can see that it's got that database icon. So what you can see here now is the important thing is that there's not 6 rows, but only 4. And that is because there's only 4 regions present in the airline 1 data set. And it's a left join, in the airline 2 data set, because airline 2 is our primary table, and this is a left join. So there's only 4 regions present in the airline 2 data set. And if you recall when we talked about joins, when you do a left join, everything that doesn't match gets discarded. So in this case, North and South America got discarded from the final resulting table. And that is because blending is a very smart, but it is a left join. So that's pretty much it. That is how blending works in Tableau. I realize that this has been a rather lengthy tutorial, but it is important to understand how blending works, and we went through everything that is included in a blend. So we talked about the primary, the secondary tables. We talked about how to add our own elements to the join. So in this case, period and region. We talked about how the blend actually works, that it first aggregates the data and then it only joins the data in your final result. And we also looked at why the blend is actually a left join and how you should be cautious of that when you are creating your visualizations. So that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, happy analyzing.